Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's live stream. Last week we didn't have a show, and that was because of the holidays. So I hope everyone did have a safe and productive week. And tonight, as you can see in the title, we will be talking about conflict resolution and the very troubling thing that happened with the three young girls that were killed in the schoolhouse fights. I'm hearing an echo, so I'm going to pause the stream for 1 second to see where the echo is coming from. Okay, if you don't hear the echo anymore, press 1. I think that having a bit of a problem. Okay, if you hear the echo at any time, you can just press 1 in the chat. So yes, as you can see in the title, tonight is going to be a pretty heavy conversation. I want to speak to the community about our children, which is something that's very, very near and dear to me and very important to me, because over the past few weeks, I've been noticing that there's some very troubling things that are happening to our children. And this is within the community and also with, forces on the outside of the community. But before we get into tonight's topic, I do want to inform everyone that this Sunday will be the last Sunday live stream. Live streams will be moving to Thursday nights at 8, same time. And that is due to the fact that Thursdays are a little bit more of a high traffic night for social media, as well as, some family things going on. Thursday is just a better night for me to do the live stream. So I hope that everyone will continue to tune in. It will be Thursday nights at 8, and we will be continuing the community conversations. And I hope that, everyone thus far who has subscribed to the channel, I hope that you all are getting something from our conversations. Like I said, the solutions for the community, that is our responsibility. And I feel like these conversations definitely, springs us forward in coming up with solutions to many of the issues that we are facing within the community. So I do want to thank everyone, all of the subscribers, everyone who takes out the time to get involved in the conversations. And I hope that, the things that we're discussing here, you all are, carrying the conversations on in the community, because I feel that it is very, very imperative that, we reach as many people as we can to uplift one another. Because as we all know, our community receives a lot of scrutiny and from people on the outside, which, that doesn't really matter to me all that much. But, when there's external forces coming against the community, I feel that it's definitely up to us to do all we can do to make sure that we're, taking care of one another and we're doing the best we can to uplift each other. As far as tonight's discussion, it's been weighing very heavily on me, the things that I've been seeing, related to our children. And two of the things that really stood out to me the most was the situation that I'm sure everyone has seen circulating on Facebook and other social media outlets, where there was a very disturbing video that circulated of a young man being beaten and brutalized by a police officer. I believe this young man was only 15 years old. And, a conflict occurred outside of a McDonald's, not too far from the school, where this young man was left badly beaten and bloody, um, over a situation that I personally feel did not warrant what happened to this young man. And it was just very, very troubling to see the video, of this young boy actually, being beaten and harmed in such a manner by, a grown man, and, someone who is supposed to be doing their best to resolve situations. And just to see this man, the way that he harmed this child, it was something that was very, very troubling to see, as well as, it was very upsetting to watch as well. And, as a parent, and I'm sure other people as parents, to see this sort of behavior from an officer is very troubling. But unfortunately, it's something that we've seen so many times, to the point where it's a situation that, and in many ways, it's not even that shocking to see police officers behaving in this way, especially predominantly in Black communities. And I feel that, it's time for us to become more proactive in these situations, to where we are going down to the police stations and we are sending a message that we've had enough of these sort of things going on in our communities. As I said, we see these things occurring time and time again, where men, women, and children are, being attacked in very vicious, vicious ways by law enforcement officers. And, regardless of what people think, I don't feel that there's ever a time in which a police officer should be resulting to such brutal violence against anyone in the line of duty. We, in a sense, have normalized, police officers just being able to do whatever it is that they want to do to anyone without any consequence. And I feel that it is up to us as a community to send a strong message that we are not going to stand for the brutality. You know, Time and time again, we're told that if we just comply, these situations won't happen. And, there's much flaws within that logic, because with all these videos surfacing, we can see that in many situations, it can be very, very minor infractions for which people are being shot, badly beaten, and even killed in certain situations. And, this is putting fear into the hearts and minds of the community. This is putting fear into the hearts and minds of our children. And, as I said before, every situation that is occurring within our community, it is our job to take care of these situations. Many times we send an outcry to lawmakers and people who, have been placed into positions of power, that should be, showing more of a greater concern for the community. But in many cases, time and time again, they have shown us that there is very little concern for, what is these attacks that are being carried out against, men, women, and children within our community. And, another thing that I saw, with a lot of these presidential candidates, when they are confronted with the question about what are they going to do about the brutality and all the attacks that are coming against our community, a lot of them, they like to tap dance around that question. They don't really want to answer it. And, my point of view on it is, if you getting votes and winning the election is more important than a whole, an entire community of people being brutalized, then we really need to be questioning if we are going to put our support behind any of these people, because time and time again, we're looking for support and nobody is coming to the aid of our community. And that's something that we need to pay very close attention to when it comes to these lawmakers, and the way that in many cases they completely, ignore things that are going on within our community. And as I stated, I feel that we should definitely be questioning if we are going to put support behind these candidates, if they are not going to speak up for us. At the same time, they're not speaking up for us. They expect for us to come out and put our support behind them and give them our votes. And, if the support is not going to be reciprocated, then we need to be looking um, for alternative measures for, how we are going to rally behind candidates. And, there needs to be a certain level of consequence for these people that have no vested interest in doing what it is that they should be doing for communities that they claim that they are here to represent. In the chat, Ms. Arquay says, it's hard to make change happen when you are alone. Today, most of us talk about it on social media, then forget about it. We don't mobilize like our predecessors did. I completely agree with Ms. Arquay, and that's why, I stated that I hope that the conversations that we are having here, we're carrying these messages out into the community. And, as time progresses, we're definitely going to have to have boots on the ground and reach out to each other outside of social media to see these changes occur. Because it's very, very easy to be within the comfort of your home and have conversations online and express yourself, which I feel is very, very necessary. We do need to have the conversations, but we also need to mobilize. We need to get out there and unify with one another outside of social media, and have community meetings and come up with ways that we are really going to tackle the various issues that we're going through, within society. Like I said, there are so many external forces that are, seek to come against our community, and we really don't have a protection mechanism in place, not a consistent one. We don't have a consistent and unified protection mechanism in place for how we're going to go about, defending ourselves. And I know that it's very, very difficult to deal with some of, these forces that are coming against us, especially when a lot of this stuff is coming from the state and our very own government. So we're going to have to come up with progressive and smart ways to keep ourselves safe while tackling a lot of these issues that we're facing. But the main thing that I wanted to discuss tonight is the young man, that was badly beaten by the police officers. And it was just very, very troubling to see. As I stated, this young man was a 15-year-old high school student, and the attack that took place against him, you know, as a parent, it was something that was very, very difficult for me to watch. And, you know, unfortunately, that could be any of our children that could be in that situation. And some of the things I think that we can do as a community is, we can send a message to these officers and to these police departments. We may have to start out doing this, coming up with these solutions, and handling this within the court system. Because the one thing that I do want to say is that a lot of times, unfortunately, we're not teaching our children conflict resolution. We're not teaching them how to handle themselves when they are faced with a lot of these situations. And one of the ways that we can go about doing that is we can explain to our children that uh, they have to pick their battles wisely. And, it's almost unimaginable that we would have to teach our children how to interact with adults that are supposed to be the example in the situation. But as we can see, a lot of these individuals out here within law enforcement and some even within the school system, they're very brutal to our children. And, they don't treat our children as they treat other children within other communities. And it's very troubling and it's very unfortunate that our children have to go to school and worry about, in some situations being targeted and treated unfairly and unjustly by, police officers, school resource officers, individuals that you would think would have the children's safety and best interests in mind. But as we can see, the way that they handle our children is very aggressively. And if our children even, try to stand up for themselves in any way that is perceived as being disrespectful, they are handled very, very harshly. Um, so, as I was stating, we need to teach our children that we are the authority in their life, and we will be there to help them and protect them in these situations. So when they are confronted with these problems, the best thing for them to do in those situations is to, listen and do what is asked of them. Um, do everything that they can to try to quell conflict, because a lot of these police officers, they are hell bent on making an example out of our children. And, within those situations and at those times, we're not there. So we're going to have these conversations at home, letting our children know that not everything is to be argued within the moment. A lot of times we do see some of the children being combative with the police officers. And this is in no way, shape, or form defending the way that these officers choose to handle these situations. But we do have to explain to our children that in these situations, many, many times, the outcome will not be good for them because the officer has the upper hand within that situation. And the best thing that, we can teach our child to do is to handle themselves respectfully within that situation, not to think that they have done anything wrong, and always, show a level of confidence, and not for them to cower in the situation, but for them to be smart and to handle themselves in a way where, the situation can be resolved safely and they can come home to us unharmed, and we'll be able to handle the situation from there. Because, the last thing that we want as parents is for our children to be in a situation like that of that young man in South Florida, and many situations that we see throughout the country where our children are put in harm's way many times. And, you know, as I was stating, because we're not there to protect our children within that time, they're going to have to understand, ways to protect themselves and be able to resolve conflicts so that they will be safe. And, as I was stating, it's very, very unfortunate that we have to always, teach our children to handle themselves in certain ways in situations where many times they are not the aggressor. But unfortunately, our children are in hostile environments a lot of times, even within the school. And, they don't see this with some of their peers. And it's very troubling to have to explain to them why is it that they're being treated differently. But it's a reality, and it's something that, until we're able to change the trajectory of how things are handled, we're going to have to teach our children ways to resolve issues so that they can remain safe and that they'll be able to come home to us to let us know what happened, so that as the parent, we'll be able to take proper measures to see to it that we can handle these situations in ways that will send a message to the police officers as well as the administration at the school, that our children do have the protection of the community and have the protection of us as parents. Another thing that I want to segue into is the very troubling incidents that have occurred with three young ladies that were in schoolhouse fights. And unfortunately, those fights resulted in the death of those three young girls. The youngest girl within this situation was only 10 years old. And, the message that I want to send to the community about this is, I want to speak to the parents, because I really, really want to know, what is it that our children are experiencing that they, in many situations, don't have basic respect for other people? What is it that, what type of environments are they in where they feel that all situations have to be handled with violence? Um, there has to be a better way. And it is up to us as parents to teach our children that all situations do not have to be handled, with physical altercations. Because as we can see, as a result of these situations, our children are committing suicide. They're being beaten to the point where, as I stated, these three young women they're gone. They'll never be able to spend another day with their families. And this is very, very unfortunate. And a lot of times it is because, and I say we, because I don't exclude myself from the community. I feel as if the issues of our community falls on the backs of all of us. But within our individual homes, we need to teach our children just the basics of how to deal with people and how to have common respect for other people. Because a lot of times, the fingers are being pointed at the children, but I have to question the parents, because I don't understand what it is that a child is experiencing where they would feel the need to beat someone to the point where they are so badly injured that they die as a result of the attack. um this is something that is just very troubling to me to even have to discuss, because I can't imagine a situation in which children are beating a peer so badly that the child sustains injuries that ultimately result in a death. Okay, I see some comments coming in the chat. Patrice Thomas says, in such cases, it is important to always listen and don't react in a hostile manner. Um, yeah, as I was stating, I totally agree with that. And I feel as if, you know, we need to be doing our part as parents to teach our children how to handle themselves in situations where, the outcome for them is not going to be good if they choose to, to be to be combative and confrontational. You know, as I stated, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have done anything wrong, but they need to understand that every situation does not warrant conflict on their behalf, and they need to be smart and do what it is that is going to keep them safe within that situation. Ms. Arquay says our kids don't have those skills because we don't and didn't. You remember how it was back in the day. We couldn't back down from a fight, period. All we knew was to fight. I totally agree with that. And that's something that I was actually just about to mention, Ms. Arquay. We need to be teaching our kids a better way than what we were exposed to. And that's why I posed the question, what is it that our children are being exposed to that makes them think that every situation calls for them to be violent with one another? You know, I'm all for self-defense, but when it comes to each and every little petty disagreement resulting in violence, I think that it's time for us to teach our children a better way. I feel as, you know, as a community as a whole, that's why I stated that we need to be teaching our children conflict resolution, because every situation does not need to lead to someone being attacked physically. There's other measures in which, you know, situations can be resolved. I think that the main thing is that parents need to be teaching their children that when you go to school, you are there for, you know, a few basic things. You are there to learn what it is that you need to learn to progress yourself forward, to be able to sustain a life within society. You're there to, you know, be within an environment where you are interacting with your peers in a positive way. um, you know, when you think about the number of children that are constantly being bullied and chastised by other students, is overwhelming. And, you know, like I said, it starts at home with what is it that our children are being exposed to, and how much violence is it that we may be engaging in. You know, how confrontational are we as parents, and what type of message are we sending to our children that would even let them think that it's okay to always be so confrontational and so combative with each other. Um, and as Ms. Arquay was stating, in many situations, a lot of us were taught to not back down from a fight. And, you know, I'm not suggesting that we teach our children to be mistreated, to be beaten, and not stand up for themselves. But, you know, a lot of times these conflicts can be resolved with everyone just keeping a cool head, and, you know, talking to one another. A lot of times, a lot of these disagreements are over very trivial things. And I feel as if, as parents, we were having the proper conversations with our children, letting them know that, you know, a lot of things that we have been taught, we have to unlearn these things. Because, you know, teaching our children that we have to be on the attack all the time, we always have to be aggressive, a lot of that carries over out into, you know, adulthood. And that's why we see so many times people, you know, adults don't even know how to interact with one another. But we cannot continue these generational attitudes of just being so confrontational and so combative with each other, because we already know what we're up against when it comes to forces that are outside of the community. We have so many unwarranted attacks from the outside that we really cannot afford to be attacking each other within the community. Forward Movement says, at the same time, 15-year-old boy feels like he knows everything and doesn't want to hear anything from anyone. You know, teenagers, can be very, very difficult to deal with. I don't disagree with that. But as far as an adult viciously attacking a child within that way, what type of message does that send to the child? As I stated, as adults, we have to check ourselves and we have to say to ourselves, what is it that we're doing that, is sending a message to the children that it's okay to always be physical? That police officer um, attacking that boy within that way is definitely sending the wrong message. You know, I don't even understand. It's very unconscionable to me why an adult would even feel the need to be so physical and so aggressive with a teenager, of regardless of how that child is responding to you. Because in that situation, there's no way in the world that that officer could have felt that that child was a threat to him and had the upper hand on him. You know, as adults, we have to send the right message to children. But I do understand what you mean by, teenagers feeling as if they know everything. But it all goes back to us being the example and showing them the right way, teaching them, basic skills on how to resolve issues. Ms. Arquay says, I agree with you. I stress self-defense, but conflict resolution is something I have not broached. My son had a fight a few months ago and is friends again with the kid. It could have been avoided. I agree with that 100%, and that's why I say a lot of these situations are so trivial that, if we're teaching our children to, discuss things with one another, rather than being so quick to lay hands on one another, we'll see a lot of these situations begin to dissipate because, you know, um, unfortunately, in this day and age, a fight could lead to something much, much more devastating. We're seeing our children losing their lives. And personally, I feel as if this is a failure on behalf of us as parents. There's just no way around it. A lot of times, when you see a child acting out, it is because there's somewhere within the home that, the parent is failing to teach them something that is imperative to the way they're going to deal with people out in public. We can't continue to teach this aggressive and violent culture to our children. A lot of times we feel as if we are we're doing our children a favor and, doing good service to them by teaching them to be aggressive with people and teaching them that, it's okay to be physical. And like I said, self-defense is one thing, but, teaching them to always just be on the attack, it is, it's hindering us as a community because we see it all around us. We see the violence and we see the way that we are communicating with one another. And it's very devastating for us. And, I personally feel that it is time for us to break those generational curses and, all the things that has been handed down to us from what we've been seeing in the community. So, getting back to the three young girls that, died as a result of these fights, it's just very stressful for me because, as I said, those young ladies, they're never going back home to their families. And one of the older young ladies that was beaten and jumped by those young ladies in the bathroom, that situation was over a boy. And a lot of times we see this with young ladies. they're concentrating on things that they shouldn't even be concentrating on while they're in school. And unfortunately, a lot of times they're seeing the older women within society handling themselves that way, getting into fights with one another over men, and literally fighting with each other in the streets, being very aggressive and very violent with one another, right in front of the children. And a lot of times we wonder why they are handling themselves within the way that they're handling themselves, and it is a result of how we are choosing to communicate with one another. So these are all things that we need to take into consideration, um, because the children are watching us, and a lot of times we are not setting the best example for them. And we may feel that the children need to do as we say and not as we do, but that is not the way to handle that situation, because whether you want to admit it or not, the children are watching us, and they are patterning their behavior after the ways that we are choosing to display our behaviors. And you know I can't stress this enough, that we have to set the best example that we can as a community, so that we can make sure our children are in the safest environments possible when they are not with us. A lot of times, the kids are away from the home more than they are in the home. And we need to send them out there with the proper tools and ammunition to be able to safely navigate through society. Teaching them how to resolve conflict in the best way possible is what it is that we need to be doing. Um, you know, there was another video that surfaced, I believe this was out in Chicago, where there was about 200 kids out at a mall. And for the most part, they were being teenagers and doing what teenagers do. But things spiraled out of control quickly. And a lot of people were put in harm's way as a result of that. So, as I stated, if we're teaching our children how to handle themselves out in public, and how to walk away from conflict as opposed to running into it, we'll see a lot of these situations won't even occur, because as parents, we're doing what it is that we're supposed to be doing to teach our children the right way to go about handling themselves. And I know that a lot of us are doing the best that we can do, but we just have to be honest with the fact that some of us are not doing what it is to teach our children how to handle situations with other people. And those of us that are, our children have to go out into society and deal with the children that are not being taught the proper way to coexist with other people. And we cannot have one segment of society teaching their children the right way to go about doing things, and then another segment of society that's pretty much not really caring how they send their children out into society, and having everyone having to deal with that. I feel it's very, very irresponsible as a parent if you're going to send your child out into the world and you haven't taught them how to maintain themselves at a level in which they'll be someone that is easy to deal with. So, if anyone would like to add anything to the conversation, you can go ahead and drop it in the chat, because tonight's live stream isn't going to be that long. But I did want to get on here and speak to everyone, to have this conversation, because I feel that it's very, very important that we speak to our children and we let them know that there is a way to handle themselves that can, resolve issues in a manner where people don't have to be attacked and harmed. As I stated many, many times, these situations can be avoided. But if we're not teaching our children the right things, then we're going to see these situations continue to occur because, children, they usually react to their environment. So if we're not doing the best that we can do to create a stable environment where they're not being exposed to violent situations, they're going to carry that out into society and inflict that upon everyone else. And we really, really cannot have that. Another thing that I wanted to say is with teaching our children conflict resolution, we don't need to teach them that they can't defend themselves. That is something that I do want to stress. But there's a very fine line between defending yourself and, reacting to every situation or any and every little thing that, comes your way. I can't stress it enough. We must teach our children how to handle themselves. Because if we want to see them become productive adults, it is our responsibility to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to teach them how to handle themselves. I'm just strolling down to see if there's anything else in the chat. All right, guys, just to reiterate, this is going to be the last live stream for Sunday. If you're just coming in and you didn't hear when I started the video, live streams will be moving to Thursday nights at 8, same time. You can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Shelly Speaks 1, on Facebook at Shelly Speaks. If there are any topics that you want to discuss or anything that you just want to say to me, you can email me at shellyspeakstruth@gmail.com. Again, that's shellyspeakstruth@gmail.com. So go ahead and send me an email. You can also follow me on Twitter, like our Facebook page. And if no one has anything else to add to the conversation, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I hope to see everyone on Thursday at 8. Again, please like, subscribe, comment, and share the video. Good night.